Okay, so thank you, Katie, for that introduction. My name is Kelley Voss. I just finished my fourth year in my PhD program at UC Santa Cruz in the Ecology and Evolutionary Biology department. And I'm going to talk to you today about my ongoing research project that I've been doing through Wrigley for the last couple of years, um, cleverly titled Armed and Dangerous Retaliatory Behaviors in the California Two-Spot Octopus, Octopus bimaculatus. So before we get started, I always like to have a disclaimer about the plural of octopus because there's always a question about it. So if you're a scientist, you're going to use the word octopuses. That's the English ending es. If you're trying to make a pun, the best one is octopi, clearly. But if you're trying to be pedantic, if you're trying to be the most correct, you would say octopodes because octopus is a Greek root word, so the Greek plural would be podes there. But for this talk, I'm going to be using octopuses exclusively just to not be pedantic, I guess. So octopuses are a really crucial part of the marine ecosystem. They're eaten by a lot of top predators, and they're also cannibals, so they actually eat each other. And in turn, they put top-down pressure on a wide variety of marine fishes and invertebrates, which then are the things that eat the lower trophic level species. So you can kind of see they're kind of this node in the middle of the food web. But the thing about that is we don't know that much about octopus ecology because, as you can imagine, they're really hard to see and they're really hard to find. Um, so I've made it my mission to kind of understand more about how octopuses are contributing to the marine ecosystem, especially like the rocky reef system around Catalina Island. The species that I focus on is the California Two-Spot Octopus. It's also called the Verrill's Two-Spot Octopus. Um, it's named for these eye spots. If you can see, I'll turn on my little laser pointer. You can see this little very bright blue circle on the side of the head, because here's the real eye and here's the body and the arms, right? But this little blue circle is called an ocellus, which is a fake eye spot, and it has one on either side, and it can flash it really bright blue or make it blend into the rest of the body. It's really interesting. Um, they live really close to shore in generally 100 feet and less of water in rocky reef substrate. They eat, like I said, crustaceans, bivalves, gastropods, and they're cannibals also, so they'll eat other octopuses. And they have 8 arms, not tentacles, this is important, that they can lose to a predator, like they can lose it to injury, and then they can regrow the arm again. It's not like a lizard's tail, because a lizard can lose its tail, right? We're familiar with this, but that's on a distinct growth or a breakage plate. Like there's specific spots in a lizard's tail where it would break off, and when it regrows, it's basically just scar tissue. So the tail isn't as long and it's not as colorful, and it's kind of a little stumpy thing. But in octopuses, they regrow the full limb, which is really fascinating that they can reproduce an entire new functional arm that once it's fully grown, it's not distinctive from any of the other uninjured arms. Um, and why would an octopus lose an arm? So it's kind of in the definition of the term arm. You might have thought before today that octopuses have tentacles, but a tentacle, the physiological definition of a tentacle is a limb that is used to capture food and eat it, to put it in the mouth. But so octopuses can do that, but they also have other uses for all of those same arms. Squid and cuttlefish have tentacles. They have these 2 specialized arms that are used to grab food and bring it back to the mouth, and they don't do anything else. But octopus arms do all of these other things. So you can see we have an octopus exploring, manipulating its environment. Octopuses can use their arms to crawl, or in this case, this is a special case of bipedal locomotion, which is fascinating, that it's not using all of its limbs, just a couple. They can use their arms to imitate like a sea snake. This is a wonderpuss. And doing all of these different activities, you can see that they're using certain arms for these activities. Not every arm is used equally. So it puts those arms at greater risk. And this is an octopus that I observed in a museum collection. You can see that these two front arms, that is, normally they would have these huge arms, but you can see this little tiny arm growing here and this little tiny arm regrowing here. So the arms regrow from the tip out, and so it looks like a silly little hair growing off this stump for a very long time until the arm is fully regrown. And we can talk more about that later. But it's just interesting because these arms are kind of commonly lost. I've found that over 2/3 of octopuses that I've observed have at least one injured and regrowing arm. So is there an actual like behavioral cost to this or a physiological cost to this? Or is it, just a flesh wound? But so the theme of my dissertation is looking at how octopuses are losing their arms and how they're compensating for these missing and regrowing arms. I've already looked at which arms octopuses might commonly lose, and I found it's the front arms and kind of biased to the left, which is really interesting. That means there's something behavioral going on there, I think. I'm working on a project trying to figure out, trying to model what makes them lose their arms. The one project I'll talk about today is how octopuses are using their arms in self-defense. Oh yeah, Moray Octopus Fight Club. That's what we're talking about. And finally, how do octopuses compensate for the loss of an arm? So they're likely going to lose an arm in their lifetime. So how might they change their behavior in order to compensate for the loss of an arm while it regrows, right? So today we'll talk about self-defense. And when we're looking at octopus arms, there's a lot of them, there's 8. So I just want to orient you to what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the different arms. So they're actually a bilaterally symmetrical animal. There's a left and a right to them, you can see. And the arms are paired. They're just as a number convention. So arm pair 1 is the one to the front of the body, closest to the kind of front of the head. So you can see the eyes are here and the body, these are kind of lined up. So it's numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4 from the anterior end, so that the front eyeball end, to the posterior end, which is kind of the back of the mantle, which is essentially just like a bag of organs. And this R3 arm is specialized in males to pull a packet of sperm out of their head and pass it to the female. So it kind of looks like a little spoon or a groove at the tip of the male's third right arm, arm R3. So you'll hear me say third right arm or R3 or hectocotylized arm all interchangeably, and that all means that specialized male arm, whereas females will have suckers all the way to the tip, just like all the rest of their arms. So when we're talking about octopus self-defense, like how are they using their arms and why would they use their arms? We all are very familiar with octopus crypsis. So octopuses are very effective. This is a giant Pacific octopus that I worked with during my master's in Alaska. He was particularly good at blending into the kind of shell hash substrate in his tank. So he's got this really nice model pattern. And also he could change the texture of his skin really finely. So it kind of looks like the little rubble at the base of the tank. So we know they're really good at this. And we know that they famously have the ability to shoot ink when they're trying to escape. So I'll talk a little bit more about what I'm doing here. That's me. But this is a big ink cloud that an octopus shot at me in order to try to get away. We know that octopuses also have an uncanny ability to squeeze into small spaces to hide from predators that might be looking for them. This is another giant Pacific octopus that I worked with previously. But if an octopus can't run and it can't hide, its next escalation tactic, its next defense tactic is to use its arms. So it has 8, really up to 8, right? If it hasn't gotten bitten off already, really strong arms. They're muscular hydrostats, so they don't have an internal structure, but they have the same musculature as your tongue. So I promise I'm not watching the video, so you can do this. You can think about how your tongue moves around in your mouth. It's similar to how an octopus's arms all move. And then on those arms, they have over 200 suckers each, and those are also very strong. And so if they start to pull on the skin and try and wrestle with you, it hurts and you might want to let go of the octopus. So we kind of know that anecdotally, but no one's ever quantified what it is octopuses are actually doing when they're encountering a predator. It's been observed before, but we don't actually know what they're doing. So that's my mission to find out. So I catch an octopus. This is, I have a series of photos from Maurice Roper, who is a wonderful photographer that I met at Wrigley. And he came out with us last summer. This is my 2019 REU, Nikki Sweetheart. She's amazing. So what we do to actually catch an octopus underwater is we have our dive lights and we look in all the little rock crevices around an area. Nikki clearly found one. So we go into the hole and you can see that I've got a little syringe here and it's full of diluted white vinegar. It's kind of like I'm stink bombing them. So I depress some vinegar into the hole and then the octopus kind of goes and crawls out and we catch it and put it in a collection bag and then we bring it back. Well, what we did last summer is, and what I normally do is bring it back to Wrigley. And this is where the Fight Club comes in. So I let the octopus acclimate a little bit, and then I set up my cameras. And what I'm doing is I'm recording an hour-long interaction without any real protection between an octopus and a moray. And the reason why I'm doing this is because morays normally hunt at night. And so you can't really see what they're doing. And even if you can, they're in a rock crevice. So unless you can cram a camera in there, it's really hard to tell what it is they're doing. So I've pulled this interaction out into the dim daylight. I do this in the evening, early evening, so that the moray is naturally ready to hunt, but I can still kind of see what's going on. So we set up the cameras. All of this footage is from last summer because that was the first time I really got to do this in earnest. I'm hoping to get to do this summer too, but we'll see. And it's interesting to see, I'm mostly interested in what the octopus is doing, but you can talk to Natalie, my intern for this summer. She's going to be quantifying the behaviors of this moray here, to see kind of how it's reacting to the octopus's defense behaviors. And what I'm looking for in these videos is how long it takes the octopus to move, because I just put it in the tank and leave it and walk away, because octopuses are visual predators, so they can see me if I'm standing there watching, so I have to take a step back. That's what the cameras are for. So I want to know how long if the octopus just freezes or if it kind of jumps into action. I'd like to see how long it spends moving around the tank. Maybe it's really spending a lot of time going in circles. I'd like to know which arms it's using and what it's doing with those arms. So you can see this example of Octopus bimaculatus in a documentary kind of punching at this sarcastic fringe head. They're competing over a den space. So I'd like to know if it would use any of its arms to do this kind of movement, or if there are particular arms it's using. And I think there might be particular arms it's using based on my previous studies. And finally, when an octopus loses an arm, I'd like to know if it's autotomy or amputation. Autotomy is that process I described before where a lizard drops its tail voluntarily, so it's dropping a limb on purpose. Or in the case of this GIF here, the eel is trying to amputate or physically remove the arm of the octopus. It's not the octopus's choice to lose an arm, it is the eel's decision, and that is an amputation. So you can also see there's this spinning behavior that we'll be looking for, Natalie will be looking for this summer, because the eel tends to bite and try and pull off enough arms to disable the octopus so that it can eat it. It's a really formidable interaction because the octopus has a lot of defense mechanisms and a lot of behaviors that it can use. So does the eel. It's got this really fast spin that it can disorient the octopus long enough to pull off some arms and eat it. But the trouble doesn't stop there, right? If the arm gets pulled off, the arm has enough brain cells that it's actually kind of sentient for a little while before it dies. So the arm will start wrapping around the face of the eel and start grabbing at the walls. It's very dramatic. Um, Frankly, I don't see that much of it yet. Most of it is kind of just scaring the octopus, scaring the eel away, but we're still working to quantify all of these things, and I still have to do some more trials, hopefully soon. So what I have seen is a lot of inking. So there's a lot of that kind of behavior. Fortunately, we have flow-through tanks on the waterfront at Wrigley, so the ink kind of dissipates and the trial continues. It's not like I just blocked up the whole thing. The point of ink is not just a smoke screen. One, there's some mucus that floats around in it that's kind of a decoy. So the eel might bite at the mucus while the octopus is swimming in a different direction because it can't quite see what it's going after. And it also, the ink will coat the gills of a predator that's trying to, a fish predator, right? That's trying to attack the octopus. So if the moray takes a nice big gulp of ink water, it's getting these molecules of ink all over its gills. And so you'll see it kind of do this coughing motion and trying to clear the ink back out of its gills. And another thing that I'm interested in that further leads me to believe that octopuses are using specific arms in self-defense is males. This is a male octopus. It's not a very good photo, but I was trying not to disturb it during the trial. But it was waving one arm out, and it's arm L2. And arm L2 is radially opposite. So if you think of like a sun as kind of a circle with lines coming out, the radially opposite is kind of the opposite side of the circle. The opposite arm from its R3, that specialized arm, it's waving around to try and maybe get the moray to bite that arm off instead of the one it's trying to protect. The male can't reproduce if its arm isn't developed enough to pass sperm to the female, so they're really trying to protect that, but they might be waving this arm around. So I'm working more to quantify that and getting some more trials to continue to try and observe these kinds of things. Will be really important to fully understanding what's going on in these interactions and the moment you've been waiting for. Okay, see if I can get this to go. Just give me my pointer. Okay, so this is what it actually looks like, and this is what Natalie gets to watch all summer. So I'll let you watch it a couple more times. So we're trying to understand like the attack angle, like what direction is the eel coming from? Is he coming in really fast, or is he slowly sneaking up like this one is? You can see there's kind of you can see the bite wound right here on the arm, but it didn't actually pull an arm off. You'd be able to tell because that arm would start going crazy in the moray's mouth while the rest of the octopus slowly creeps away. So these are the kinds of interactions that I'm interested in and that I'm trying to quantify to understand what's actually happening to octopuses in the wild that we don't normally get to see, and then how they live their lives despite attacks like this. So just to summarize, octopuses are an important part of the Catalina ecosystem. Octopuses really commonly lose their arms, like I said, about 2/3 of the time, but those arms grow back, so good news. And they're great at self-defense. They have a variety of mechanisms to do that. So it must take really special abilities for predators like morays to actually prey on them. So that's what I'm trying to quantify with my work, is trying to understand these interactions. Natalie's going to be helping me a lot this summer to try and figure out the moray side of things, since I've been so focused on the octopus behavior. But I think it's going to be a really interesting project, and it's a really great insight into something that we normally can't see because it's normally at night, hidden in a rock, featuring two different really hard to observe animals. So with that, I'd like to thank the army of people that it's taken over the last 4 years to help me get to where I am at this point. Lots of funding sources. I have a wonderful lab at UC Santa Cruz that I'm happy to talk to you about a little bit more. Um, I've been coming to Wrigley since 2012, so that is 8 years. And I'm just really appreciative of everyone that I've met there and worked with there. And of course, I have to thank the octopuses and morays for participating in my study. And if you, yes, we definitely have time. If you have additional questions beyond today, you can visit my website, kelleyvoss.com, Kelley with an EY, make sure. Um, and I understand that there's going to be some Insta stories, so hopefully you can connect with me that way. Or let's just talk about questions you might have right now. So thanks for your attention and happy to chat with you more about anything you might want to know.